Well, how can we as a church help people who are suffering? I work as a missionary with a disadvantaged people group, an Indian tribe, and they are very poor, they're very suffering, uneducated, have very many needs. And just one thing that opens doors for us for the gospel, for sharing God's truth with them, is to show that we care, to help them in ways that we can. And of course, there are many ways we just cannot help. We cannot, I'm not a doctor, I can't cure their illnesses, but we can bring doctors or nurses along who can help. Um, and and we cannot financially provide for all of their needs. But in little ways, the little ways that we can, and even if it's just showing understanding, listening to them, and caring is very helpful. I'm sure that applies to people worldwide in local churches where you may be also. And but apart from that, from just caring for them and listening for them, and of course praying for them, praying as a church with them, telling them that you're praying for them or that others are praying for them, and praying together with them. That should be very encouraging. It encouraged me when I was in hospital earlier this year to hear how people back in the church are praying for me. And it encourages me again and again when I know that there are people back home praying for me, back in my church praying for me. Those are just some practical ways, I think. But many times then also we cannot change their circumstances, and they may be just caught up in despair, in just devastated and not knowing what to do, and being maybe depressed. And then it's very difficult to help them. But what's important is that we try to help give them an eternal biblical perspective on suffering, not to belittle their suffering, to take it seriously, but also to keep in mind there are people that have suffered a lot more than I have or than you have. One of those people is the Apostle Paul, and he called his suffering a light momentary affliction. And that is because there is another affliction, another suffering that is severe and that is eternal. And that is, of course, a suffering in hell for which Jesus Christ came to save us from. And Paul said that our light momentary affliction cannot compare to the glories that await us in heaven. And so if we have that perspective of knowing that whatever I experience now, that whatever suffering is now is just for a time, and it's so little compared to what awaits those who are God's enemies. And so God uses suffering for those that are not saved, to draw them to Him. We can remind them, look, that your suffering is nothing compared to what awaits you if you don't know Jesus Christ. If Jesus Christ has not saved you, if your sins are not forgiven, will you not come to Him and find salvation in Him? But also for those that are Christians that know they're going to heaven, they know they belong to Jesus, that should be also a comfort of knowing that this will be over one day, and that it's nothing compared to what would await me if Jesus hadn't saved me. And it's also nothing compared to what Jesus Himself suffered in my place on the cross. And so we need to be reminded of Jesus Christ and His sufferings and what He did for us, so that we can also have hope and have a security in knowing that whatever suffering we have now cannot compare to the suffering that Jesus Christ has saved us from if we belong to Him, and the glories that await us in heaven with Him.